This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name is Evan Jansen. The show is always live and of course it's broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. Don't forget, we're also streaming live on YouTube right now. The whole show is always available on demand on our YouTube channel. Today we're at Parliament where the President will once again answer questions in the House. Parliament's new rules also come into effect and we ask you, should unruly MPs be forcibly removed from the National Assembly? At SABC Newsroom, that's where you interact on this question with us. Grace Mugabe is amongst the invited guests, mind you, at the ANC Women's League conference that's being held in Centurion here in Gauteng. Well, we'll be there live shortly to get an update. Also, more than 12,000 deaths later, finally, it seems as we have an Ebola vaccine that's soon to be available to the masses here on the continent. And we close with a look at the Innovation Summit that's set to be held in Cape Town. But first, the day's news from Anine.
Good morning, I'm Anine Dormal. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. It's emerged that another policeman has been killed by criminals. His colleague was seriously injured when they were attacked by two men at the Orange Farm train station south of Johannesburg last night. This brings the total of police officers killed in this country this year to 55. A number Senior Superintendent Ngelo Dlamini says is a big concern for the police force.
We are very concerned about this matter, and the provincial commissioner is also calling the members of the public to help us in identifying these killers. All the firearms that are used to kill these policemen, they are out there in the public. And the members of the public who knows about these firearms may come forward. We will reward all the information that will be given to us.
New National Assembly rules that seek to deal with disruptions in Parliament could be tested today. This during the President's oral reply session. The changes come after proceedings deintegrated during President Jacob Zuma's last oral reply session in June. The deadline for opposition parties on the Nkandla ad hoc committee to submit their recommendations has come and gone. Parties had until 8 o'clock this morning to submit their recommendations to Chairperson Cedric Frolick or be left out of the report. The opposition parties asked for an extension yesterday, this as they struggled to agree on which findings to include in their draft report. The deadline for the final report is tomorrow.
I'm a bit perturbed. I want the proposals from these parties in my office well distributed to the different political parties, and we will meet immediately after question time to the President. And I don't care what happens in the House, we will continue with the meeting after the President's question time in this venue. We'll send out the notice indicating that immediately after question time, and if need be, we'll meet Friday as well for the day. We cannot sit and waste each other's time here.
President Jacob Zuma is expected to start proceedings at the ANC Women's League National Conference today. Yesterday, 3,000 delegates completed their registration for the conference in Irene, southeast of Pretoria. The three-day conference will see a new leadership installed. Australian authorities say they are now confident that they are searching in the right area of the Indian Ocean for the missing flight MH370. This after Malaysia confirmed that the piece of wreckage found on the island of Reunion was from the plane. Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott says experts are closer to solving the puzzle of the plane's disappearance and that the search will continue. Meanwhile, search teams in the Mediterranean say they don't expect to find any more survivors from a boat which sank off Libya. Around 600 people are thought to have been on board. 400 people have been rescued and more than 20 bodies recovered. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for SABC Newsroom. You can also find us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Janine. Now, the EFF in Parliament is adamant that they will continue to ask President Zuma later when he will pay back the money used on non-security upgrades at his Nkandla residence. It is one of the 6 questions that the President will be asked during his oral reply session in Parliament today. New National Assembly rules that seek to deal with disruptions in Parliament could be tested during this oral reply session. Various rules to strengthen the authority of the Speaker and how to conduct the removal of disorderly MPs have been passed by the National Assembly. Now, our parliamentary reporter, Lucanio Calata, joins us from our parliamentary studio in Cape Town. Very good morning to you once again, Lucanio.
Evan, good morning.
Is it going to be another day of fireworks, high ratings on the parliamentary channel?
Well, Evan, we've been here before. Every time that President Jacob Zuma is in the House to answer questions, the EFF threatening or, living up to its billing to say, we are going to pose the question as to when exactly the President is going to pay back the money as per the recommendations of the Public Protector. So, yes, this morning coming into Parliament, already security was a little bit tighter than normal. The build-up in this week has led us to this point where we could see, obviously, that there's a lot of tension, that there's a little bit of a paranoia, I think, if we could describe it in that way. And, we're hoping, of course, that it doesn't turn out to be exactly as it was the other few occasions when we've had both the EFF and the President under the same roof. But chances are it will. But, I mean, the large majority of us are really hoping that it doesn't go down the same direction. Eben?
Yeah, it can deteriorate rather quickly. I wanted to stick with the presidential questions. Just one of the questions, of course, put forward is this pay back the money question. And what are some of the other questions? And I want to ask you, this pay back the money question after the work of the ad hoc committee, which will now come to an end tomorrow, is this question really still relevant?
Eben, it's a little bit tricky to answer that question because we haven't yet seen the report of the ad hoc committee. We've seen the report of the police minister and obviously what he said. But we've also then seen the report of both the Public Protector as well as the Special Investigations Unit. And the other 2 reports by the SIU and the Public Protector had intimated that the President must pay back a portion of some of the money. Whereas the police minister's report basically said the President isn't liable to pay back anything. So the ad hoc committee's report is going to be the one that's going to be forwarded to the National Assembly, and then the National Assembly will vote on that. Based on what has been said within the committee over the last few days, the ANC is of the opinion that the reports of specifically the Public Protector is very, very far from what they've actually seen and experienced themselves, and is also quite different to the report of the police minister. And we suspect, obviously, that the report will confirm the report of the ad hoc committee will confirm the report of the police minister that indeed the President isn't necessarily liable to pay anything, which then brings us back to this question of the EFF. If the report by the ad hoc committee, which will be the formal report, if that report is adopted and it states that the President isn't liable, then then Parliament, the National Assembly will then adopt that report, and it basically will make moot any question from the EFF directed to the President about him paying back the money for the non-security related upgrades at Nkandla. Eben?
Now, new rules come into effect in Parliament today. Just run us through the new rules itself and also your expectations of parliamentary force if these new rules are going to be flouted later today.
Well, Eben, we know that the new rules were obviously adopted in the National Assembly last week, I believe, and they very much change the conduct on which the Speaker as well as the chairperson of the NCOP, in which how they can conduct the business inside the National Assembly, either for a joint sitting or for just a sitting of the National Assembly. And they've got to do, obviously, with how to remove unruly MPs. And I think they center around that. And I think what the rules, what they prescribe is essentially the guidelines as to how the Speaker can then go about, what options are open to her, what she must first address the members on, and then should they then fail to adhere to her authority within the National Assembly, then she can then call on the Parliamentary Protection Services to then come in and then remove the unruly MPs. The issue, however, that has really come to the fore this week, Eben, has been the issue as who exactly makes up the Parliamentary Protection Services. Yesterday, for instance, we had opposition parties, the Democratic Alliance as well as the EFF, at the Parliamentary Oversight Authority meeting. They had wanted on the agenda to discuss the members of the Parliamentary Protection Services. They wanted to see their names, they wanted to see who they are, when they were appointed, their previous jobs, for instance, so that they can rest assured that the members of the protection services are actually employees of Parliament and that they haven't been brought into the PPS from the SAPS to come and lay down the law, if I can call it that, within the National Assembly. Eben.
Thank you very much, Lukanya. It's going to be an interesting afternoon once again in Parliament. Lukanya will keep us updated as to what happens in Parliament today. Of course, just to recap for you the backstory, new National Assembly rules that seek to deal with disruptions in Parliament could be tested today during the President's oral reply session. The charges came after proceeding, or the changes rather, after proceedings degenerated during the President's last oral reply session in June of this year. Meanwhile, the EFF and the DA are accusing Parliament of ducking questions about its protection services.
Police officers clad in white shirts entering the National Assembly to remove EFF MPs. A massive outcry followed this scuffle. Opposition parties demanded that it should never happen again. An outcry they claim fell on deaf ears. They believe police officers have joined the security team through the back door.
It's very clear that what the ANC are trying to do is avoid some very tough questions about who actually is going to be in the House tomorrow, because they know that if it's true that the South African Police Service are going to come there in drag tomorrow, then it simply is against the rule of Parliament and against the Constitution and against the spirit of what the House adopted last week.
So we had raised that issue as the EFF to say that what procedure has been followed to employ a security service that is aimed at victimizing members of Parliament, and there is no one who is responding to that question.
Parliament rejects this outright, saying the meeting simply ran out of time after 2 hours.
Those matters will be responded to, they will be attended to. It's not something that I think the Speaker and the Chair will be any hesitant to respond to. There's no underground agenda.
The ANC says the DA and EFF are just paranoid.
Those issues, as far as we are concerned, are not going anywhere. They can be discussed at the next POA meeting. So their allegation really is just a reflection of paranoia, and really that should be their problem. They shouldn't make that the problem of any party or Parliament itself.
Lukhanyo Chalada, SABC News, Parliament.
Yeah, on the screen you saw the question there. Our question of the day to you is, should unruly MPs, there it is, be forcibly removed from the National Assembly a little bit later? Of course, new rules that seek to deal with disruptions in Parliament could be tested during the President's oral reply session today. Here are some of your views on this issue. Some are very emotive, some a little bit less interest. Patrick says the new parley rules are likely to cause chaos in Parliament because the intent is misplaced. That one from Patrick. Pumzile says, let's hope the new rules will restore dignity to Parliament. Some MPs are setting a bad example for members of the public. That one from Pumzile. Joanelle Magni says, what are the new rules in Parley? Well, you should be watching this channel. You should be watching the Parliamentary channel as well. Joanelle, what are the new rules in Parliament? Well, you cannot be unruly, full stop. You have to behave. Let's move on and take a look at the picture of the day. This one comes from Adesh on the passenger ferry that collided with a fishing boat on Lake Victoria yesterday. That's the aftermath, and he says hashtag Lake Victoria Red Cross sends rescue team after boat capsizes near Remba Island, Kenya. Yes, that tragedy happened yesterday. Now for a look at the front pages from around the globe. We start in Scotland. The Scotland says hundreds are feared dead after a fishing boat carrying 600 migrants capsized in the Mediterranean just north of Libya. We move to China. The South China Morning Post reports Australian authorities said this morning they were confident the search for MH370 was being carried out in the right area and the plane's crash site would be found after Malaysia confirmed debris on an Indian Ocean island that was from the missing flight. Finally, in the United Kingdom, The Independent says Britain has a responsibility to stop ISIS from infiltrating Tunisia. The country's Prime Minister said this because the United Kingdom is partly to blame for creating the violent chaos that allowed the extreme Islamist movement to flourish in neighbouring Libya. Now, let's take a look at what's happening here in South Africa, in Johannesburg, where a traditional healer is expected to appear in the Kentani Magistrates Court on charges of rape and abduction after he allegedly raped a 15-year-old girl who was forced to marry him as well. She was taken to the 43-year-old man for treatment. Still in the City of Gold, the Constitutional Court will hear an application for leave to appeal concerning a claim for damages suffered as a result of injuries sustained by a rail commuter and whether the railway company took reasonable measures in the incident. In 2011, the applicant was robbed and assaulted by 3 men who threw him out of a moving train. As a result, one of his legs had to be amputated. Then, in the capital, Pretoria, the trial against 8 former police officers accused of murdering Mozambican taxi driver Mido Macia 2 years ago will continue in the High Court there. Now, time to take it back. On the morning of the 6th of August 1945, an American B-29 bomber, the Enola Gay, dropped the first atomic bomb used in warfare on the Japanese city of Hiroshima. The 4.4-ton uranium-235 device exploded above the ground, releasing a blinding light, followed by a fireball with a surface temperature of 6,000 degrees Celsius. The blast radius was greater than 10 square kilometers, and the intense heat of the explosion created many fires which consumed the city of Hiroshima and lasted for 3 days, trapping and killing many of the survivors of the initial blast. Thousands of people were left homeless and fled the devastated city. Hiroshima and Nagasaki became the first cities in the world to witness the terrible power of atomic-age weapons, as you see in some of those clips. May we never see that on this planet ever again. Time for us to take a break. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News.
An investigation is now underway to establish whether the men were involved in other crimes. One of the men has also been linked to another shooting 2 weeks ago where a police officer died.
This is the strongest reading since October last year. New orders led to a rise in output for the first time since November. This means that the first quarter could have ended with a new high momentum that's likely to get carried into the second quarter.
An increase in oil supply from that country is likely to increase global oversupply of oil, and that in turn should spell continued lower oil prices.
We saw that really with the adjustments in the fuel price, both in March and now in April, that consumer inflation has bottomed and it will start to rise slowly going forward over coming months.
For all your business news, stay tuned to your favorite channel, SABC News, at 1 Monday to Friday.
Yeah, the ANC Women's League's 12th National Conference kicks off today and will go until Saturday. The conference will also focus on challenges facing women, not just on the continent, but around the world. One of the issues women are grappling with around the world right now is leadership. The League has also hinted for the first time that it intends to put forward a female presidential candidate for both the ANC and to possibly lead the country after the 2019 elections. Now, visitors from across the regions, former liberation movements and women's leagues are also expected to attend, most notably Zimbabwe's First Lady and President of ZANU-PF's Women's League, Grace Mugabe. August, of course, is Women's Month here in South Africa, commemorated in honor of the pioneers who braved the icy steps of the Union buildings on the 9th of August 1956 to take on the might of the then apartheid regime. Now, our contributing editor, Vuyo Mvoko, is at the conference. He's with a guest who is Kusela Sangoni Kawe of the ANC Women's League himself. Good morning to you, Vuyo. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Well, that day has indeed arrived. The ANC Women's League ready to kick off their much-awaited conference, elective conference. This, over the next couple of days, they will be here electing a new leadership, but also discussing a whole range of issues affecting women of the ANC, but also more broadly, the women of South Africa. And joining us here to talk us through what they will be discussing, what's going to happen today, the first day, and tomorrow is, of course, the ANC Women's League's acting spokesperson, Kusela Sangwenikawa. Kusela, thank you very much for joining us. Take us through what is going to happen today, if you will.
Thank you very much, Vuyo. Today is really the formal opening of conference. We're sitting in this huge hall. Delegates have already started arriving. Now, what we're expecting at the formal opening is that the hosting province, which is Gauteng, will be welcoming us. The chairperson of the province will give an opening address. It will then be followed by messages of support. These normally come from fraternal organizations. We have invited the former liberation movements to be part of this conference. I know that SWAPO is here, ZANU-PF is here, Chama Mapinduzi from Tanzania is here. The other leagues of the ANC, the Youth League, the Veterans League, will also pass messages of support. Then we have a whole range of structures of the MDM, including amongst them our alliance partners. All of them will have a voice. And then we get to the big one where the president of the ANC Women's League, Comrade Enji Mutsecha, will deliver her political report. The political report really speaks to what has been achieved over the last term, under what conditions, where to from here, what are the key challenges facing society, women in particular, that we should be responding to. The president of the African National Congress, as is traditions, then comes to give a message. Now, the address from the president of the ANC will speak to what is it that the African National Congress expects from the Women's League? You'll know that we're an integral component of the ANC, not autonomous. We work under the discipline and ideology of the ANC. So that way forward, that direction from the president is key. Delegates will then sit down. You'll remember that we'd gone to policy conference in December 2014. Look at those resolutions. What are the practical steps that we need to take in order to be able to realize our objectives?
Now, the theme, radical transformation for women's social economic rights. Take us through the decision to settle on that particular theme.
Well, the 53rd National Conference of the African National Congress in Mangaung had declared this the second phase of our transition. Now, as a key component of that was this call for radical economic transformation, which meant that we had to start doing things differently. We need to ensure that we pick up the pace, accelerate the pace of change. And within that, there was never necessarily a gender-specific approach. And what the Women's League is coming here to say is that this radical economic transformation, what does it mean for women? When we agree on the feminization of poverty in South Africa, what are the radical steps that we need to take to be able to change that particular situation? So coming to that, we realize the strides that we have achieved over the last 21 years, but we're looking now at, in this second phase, taking that even further, putting a sense of urgency to it.
Now, you know, of course, that a lot of criticism has been leveled at the ANC Women's League, and one of those has been the fact, many people would say, that in reality, the Women's League has been a fodder, basically, for people who want to rise up. They would then use the ANC Women's League to support them so that they can reach, get the positions that they want, whether in government or within the ANC. Is there a realization among ANC Women's League activists? Do you get a sense that there's a realization that that has to stop, and they really have to use their power and influence for the benefit of women within the ANC, but more broadly in society?
You know, such criticism would really be unfortunate. The Women's League has got a lot to show over the last 7 decades or so of its existence. You will know that for the longest time, the ANC never even took issues of non-sexism as part of the revolution that we were embarking upon as South Africans. When we look today and we enjoy particular successes around the 50-50 quota, issues around employment equity, affirmative action, and how those have ensured the advancement of women. At the core of that, and that struggle, has been the Women's League. Now, it also goes back to understanding that the ANC Women's League has always sought to unite women across the political divide through, for example, the Progressive Women's Movement of South Africa. Now, those particular voices, in so doing so, are able to position women in positions of responsibility like we want. But to say that such an outcome, I don't know, maybe the Women's League is a victim of its own successes, because when women then are able to take up those opportunities, such an accusation is made, of a voting fodder. But I believe much has been achieved. Yes, there's still much more to be done.
Kusela Sangweni, thank you very much indeed. Kusela, the acting spokesperson of the ANC Women's League. Well, of course, we will be here throughout the day, right through to the evening, bringing you updates on what will be happening here at the elective conference of the African National Congress Women's League. For now, it's back to the studio.
Thank you very much, Vuyo Mvoke. As you can see, spirited start there to the conference. Of course, it will last until Saturday, and we'll keep you updated as to what comes out of there over the next couple of days. Should be very interesting. One of the key discussion points will be around a woman president, the role of a female president here in South Africa. On Monday, Women's Day, on this show, we'll take that discussion even a little bit further. So that should be a very interesting. Moving on, the slowdown in the South African economy and the drop in the oil price has had a significant impact on businesses, not just here, but across the continent. Global giant Nestle confirmed reports it would axe 15% of its workforce across 21 African countries after overestimating consumer spending power in the region. while Nigerian breweries, the poster child for homegrown African brands, has experienced an 8.5% drop in profits for the first half of 2015. While corporate Africa figures out what to do with commercial volatility across all the markets, author of the book Connect with the Continent and a regular Newsroom contributor, Terry Bien, sees many corporations pulling back and retreating to the safe haven of Dubai. Let's listen to Terry.
Good morning, this is Terry coming from Dubai. I've been traveling through the Emirate for the last week or so, meeting with an awful lot of international businesses that are based here, doing business across the continent. What's become absolutely fascinating is the number of international businesses that are not in Africa, but are driving business in Africa. And Dubai seems to be the place to be for setting up shop if you don't want to base yourself on the continent, but want to do business across the continent.
That's where you can follow Terry Bien. You can get him on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, or you can go to terrybien.com for some updates as to what is happening in business around the African continent.
SABC News seeks to be the biggest, the most extensive and diverse news organization on the continent. Our mission is to provide accurate and credible news and current affairs programming throughout the day. We are committed to covering every part of the continent. We reflect the world to Africa and Africa to the world. SABC News, Africa's news leader. Now available throughout the continent.
Your World makes it its business every evening to round up the leading local stories and international news to keep you informed all the time.
Make a date with Your World every evening for all the news headlines around the world to keep you abreast with knowledge.
Catch Your World for headlines across the world every Monday to Friday from 9 p.m, then Saturday and Sunday from 7 p.m.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the stories making headlines today. It's emerged that another policeman has been killed by criminals. His colleague was seriously injured when they were attacked by two men at the Orange Farm train station south of Johannesburg last night. This brings the total of police officers killed in this country this year to 55. New National Assembly rules that seek to deal with disruptions in Parliament could be tested today. This during the President's oral reply session. The changes come after proceedings disintegrated during President Jacob Zuma's last oral reply session in June. And the deadline for opposition parties on the Nkandla ad hoc committee to submit their recommendations has come and gone. Parties had until 8 o'clock this morning to submit their recommendations to Chairperson Cedric Frolick or be left out of the report. Remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for SABC Newsroom. You can also, of course, follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Evan, back to you.
Thank you once again, Anine. Exactly a year ago, West Africa was facing the most devastating Ebola outbreak in history. Now, nearly 30,000 cases and more than 10,000 deaths later, researchers think they might have a vaccine that can protect people from this deadly virus. The clinical trial started in Guinea on the 23rd of March this year, following the development of the vaccine by researchers at the Public Health Agency of Canada. The vaccine is now under development by the drug company Merck, and patient candidates are currently being studied in Guinea. The results of the study, which was led by the World Health Organization, suggests the vaccine is 100% effective, a historical accomplishment. Now, joining us from Cape Town via Skype is the Director of Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders South Africa's medical unit, Dr. Tom Almond. Dr. Almond, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, good morning.
The first results from the trial were presented in the medical journal, the Lancet, last week. How was this particular trial conducted, and what do you think of the first outcomes?
Well, it's fantastic news, coming very late for the thousands who've died in this epidemic, but an unbelievable achievement to move so fast. And I think more than many could have hoped, such an effective, or apparently effective, vaccine that's safe. The study was done in Guinea, as you said, in quite an innovative approach called a ring vaccination approach, which is what the world used to eradicate smallpox back in the 70s, where any case that was found, all of their contacts, the people in the home and living around them, were given the vaccine to try and both protect them and to put a kind of protective barrier around the case to stop the spread of the disease. And as we see from these interim results, and the trial will continue, it looks so far to be 100% effective.
You talk about that 100% effectiveness in individuals. How many more trials, testing and data collection is there needed before an application for marketing approval to the health authorities can be made?
Well, the first thing to say is that we can't wait. This vaccine is immediately needed, particularly for the contacts of cases and the healthcare workers at the front line. And we're calling for the vaccine, the trial to be expanded to include people in Liberia and Sierra Leone, so that everyone who needs it gets it immediately. In terms of regulatory approval, that's going to take a lot longer. We can't afford to wait, and the exceptional nature of this epidemic shows that we need new ways to move faster with developing vaccines and treatments in future.
What measures are we putting in place to make sure that this vaccine will be affordable, firstly, and secondly, accessible to people in those developing countries that are really battling with the outbreak or affected by it?
Well, obviously, that was one of the first questions when we got together with WHO, Merck, the pharmaceutical company, and others to think about how we could rapidly move towards a vaccine. And it's been clear since the beginning the vaccine must be free and sufficiently produced to be available for all those who need it. We'll be watching that very closely, but for the moment there's a very significant commitment with Gavi, the Vaccines Initiative, to ensure that the vaccine is available immediately to all those who need it.
Are you happy with the time frames, how long it's taken for this vaccine to get to this point, and with the time frames going forward?
It's a difficult question. I think that we are impressed with the speed that this has come together. Normally, vaccine development takes many, many years, and once the world woke up, this group have moved very fast in producing a vaccine. We have to ask the question first of why it's taken so long, why such a vaccine wasn't available in the first place. And it's clear that the world's research system for both vaccines and treatments fails and continues to fail the needs of the poorest people, where there's no market to stimulate production. And in the case of Ebola, perhaps a large part of the interest was because there is a potential threat to Europe and America from spread of this virus. We can't afford to rely on that in future to produce vaccines and treatments for people who need them. And going forward, yes, there are still very big questions about how we ensure that this vaccine in the future, hopefully we're about to see the end of this epidemic, though we need to keep up vigilance and carry on with all of the early diagnosis, isolation, health promotion that's been going on. But we need to watch very closely to ensure that when the eyes of the world move away from the current epidemic, we continue both to prevent and respond to Ebola risk elsewhere, but also to reinforce the health systems that, because of the lack of investment, are unable in the first place to deal with such epidemics.
What would you say were the key lessons that we as the world learned from this outbreak and then from our response to this outbreak?
I think that on the positive side, we learned that when the world gets together, when researchers get together and work together for a common good, they can make incredible achievements. But as I said, this is too little, far too late. These countries couldn't afford to lose the 500 healthcare workers who've died because there was no vaccine. And we need to make sure that, as I said, the world will move away. The world is soon going to forget about what's happened in these countries, and yet they continue to have the highest mortality rates in the world in women and children. And we need to make sure that the health systems are reinforced and that the funding they need gets to the countries.
And economically, has this been a massive setback for these countries?
Undoubtedly, a massive setback, both economically and in terms of the lives of the people of the country. They were struggling very badly before this epidemic, and things are even worse now.
Thank you for joining us. The good news is that no more deaths. Dr. Tom Allman from Médecins Sans Frontières joining us via Skype from Cape Town. We're talking about, of course, the Ebola vaccine that is now finally being developed and almost ready to be put forward to deal with this disease that's decimated Guinea and other West African countries. Now, at the end of this month, the Innovation Summit will again invite South African, African and global innovators to come together and showcase their exceptional talents and ideas. Now, the 2015 theme, Innovation Intelligence, will look at how new and convergent thinking helps to create a competitive edge in today's saturated marketplace. Here to tell us a little bit more about this, well, we are joined by the summit's chairperson, Dr. Audrey Verhagen. Very good morning to you, Dr. Audrey. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Evan.
This is the 8th Innovation Summit here in South Africa. Tell us where we are now and where we come from.
Evan, things have changed in the past 8 years for innovation in South Africa. We started because there was definitely a lack of platforms that brought government and the private sector and the academic sector together in one so that we could accelerate ideas. That makes a difference in South Africa. And the summit started with 78 people, and this year we hope for 10,000 people walking through our doors.
That's amazing growth. From the 26th until the 29th of this month, we'll see international local gurus talk about the country's entrepreneurial landscape. Who are the key visitors that we're going to see?
Right, we've got highlights. We've got a lady from Silicon Valley, Beth Suzanne, going to teach our local pitchers how to perfect your pitch so that they can scale their businesses. We've got FNB CEO convening a panel for big business to say, what are you doing to create a better landscape for innovators in South Africa? Very interesting discussion there. We've got PwC launching their survey and insights on the challenges that startups face in South Africa specifically. We've got the CEO of the Research Institute for Innovation and Sustainability, Davis Cook, talking about open innovation. We've got an international speaker, Gijs van Woeven, talking about how to start with innovation. We've got Dion Chang talking about the trends in the world that disrupt innovation.
Now, you left out Minister Rob Davies, who's going to launch a new industrial support program, which is interesting for me in this context. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, it's actually his deputy minister that's coming for the launch now.
Oh, he's been downgraded?
I think he's traveling overseas. But he is launching a very important program from the DTI, and that's the Support Program for Industrial Innovation. The short name is SPII, so that people can Google it, SPII. And it is incentives for people to come up with new ideas and bring it to market and build that first prototype. That's the thing you usually do on your own in your garage, in your kitchen, and you get very little support. So this is really to help those startups, those first phase.
Now, we're going to be in Cape Town. And for me, it's a little bit ironic because I'm from Cape Town, and Cape Town has a very unhealthy Uber situation. Yeah. Now, Uber is, for me, is the most innovative of businesses that we see today. The mayor, Auntie Patricia de Lille, will speak about creating an enabling environment for innovators. With the backstory of Uber, how do you balance that?
Okay, you know, I think Uber is an innovative concept, and I think the lesson here is that there is no innovation that hits the market without pain, and the taxi drivers have an opinion on this, and I think that opinion has now spread to the rest of the country as well. It's not just Cape Town, so it's becoming a hot debate, and. You know, when you bought your first cell phone, did you think it will control your life the way it does today? And what did they have to go through? Regulation, adaptation, sticking to the rules, breaking the rules. Yeah. The point is, it's not easy to get a new idea into the market, and that is what that debate shows.
And you say Cape Town is one of the most innovative of cities then?
I'm not saying that.
Oh.
I'm saying it's one of our cities. It's the South African Innovation Summit, and we go from city to city.
Interesting for me is there's going to be 30 inventor prototypes, all of them South African. Tell us about some of those and what can we be on the lookout for?
Right, if you come, and I really want to invite South Africans to come and visit Cape Town and come and look at the Innovation Summit, we've got Inventor's Garage with 30 prototypes. You say South African, I think there's one Kenyan invention there from a guy who makes bricks from waste. But there's amazing things that South Africans come up from: chargers, cooking utensils, waste management systems, things that make your life easier, social inventions. Last year's winners were these ladies from Limpopo who built this school bag with a rechargeable light in the back that charges, and then they've got light at night, and it's all from waste products. So amazing stories that you will be inspired by.
Interesting story. Just quickly, Innovation Exchange launch with the US. What's that going to be all about?
Yes, the USAID has created an exchange where people can push their ideas onto the exchange, and people can push their challenges onto the exchange. And this is going to be launched at the summit, where you can then interact with international partners as well.
Well, at Newsroom, we are all about innovation. We've got an innovation slot on our show every 2 weeks. So we will be attending the Innovation Summit because we believe that Africa can innovate its way into the next century. I thank you for joining us, Dr. Audrey Verhagen, who is the chairperson of the Innovation Summit. That's from the 26th until the 29th of this month in Cape Town. Now, before we go, in the United States, police have shot dead a man wielding an axe, a replica handgun, and pepper spray at a movie theater near Nashville, Tennessee. You can't just go to the movies with that kind of gear, can you? Let's have a look at what people are saying about this on social media. It's really quite a story. Jason T. Gaffney says, we need stricter gun control. It is crazy that there's no background check. Yeah, you can buy a can of Coke and a gun at the same place in America. Too much death, destruction, and sadness these days. Cecil the Lion, wildfires, Tennessee shooting, says Angelica. Carl says, why do people keep shooting up movie theaters? Maybe they just don't like movies? Diana Sheldon, another day, another movie theater shooting, just another day in America. Maybe it's the movies that's so violent that teaches us to shoot each other. I find there's just too much violence in the movies. And the hero principle, the heroes in the movies are all murderers. It's not good. That's where we leave it today. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios here in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. Don't forget, we're also live on YouTube at that time, with the show, of course, as always, available on demand on our YouTube channel. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.